Jeremy serves as what we call the deputy designated federal officer, and it means he's in charge of making sure that we follow all the rules and guidelines. He has Greg that helps him make sure he follows all the rules and guidelines. Greg has me to make sure we follow. It's kind of this, rolls downhill, right? And so, but ultimately, if there's a major hiccup or mistake, Jeremy's a response, and it is his job to make sure that I don't make those mistakes, and we work very hard at that. Questions? All right. Bob Berry, for the last time, you want to drop gavel and get us going?
Yes, sir. Good evening. We'll begin the evening.
All right. Hey, welcome. My name is Eric Roberts. I am with EHI Consultants, and I'm the facilitator for tonight's June 22 Portsmouth SSAB meeting. It is our first meeting in about 18 months where we have had live people in a room around the table together, and we are thankful to have you guys here. We are operating tonight's meeting under DOE COVID protocols. Because of that, we are board members only and support staff, meeting production folks, but we're keeping it small. We're asking that if you have public comments and you want to participate in the meeting, that you submit those in writing. You can submit those to Eric at pgdpcab.org, and that can be found on our CAP website, and our SSAB website, and you can get that to us. And we will include your comments in the written minutes of this meeting. Okay, so let's start with introductions. So we'll start on the far side of the table. Amy, if you would introduce yourself, and we'll go around the table.
Okay, my name is Amy Hawk.
Okay.
Beth Workman.
Matt Setters. Herman Potter. Jody Crabtree.
Jim Smalley.
Carlton K, Board Vice.
Bob Berry, Board Chair.
Jeremy Davis.
Greg Simonton, Federal Coordinator.
Excellent. Then around the room we have
Julie Galloway, support staff.
Charles Love, support staff.
Cindy Lewis, support staff.
and then I have Donnie and Eddie who are helping with the video production. So, all right, first item under tab 1 in your packet, we have an agenda for tonight's meeting. Okay, so right off the bat, we're gonna throw you a curveball and we're gonna make an adjustment to the agenda. Okay, we are going to move the item election of chair and vice chair up to directly behind liaison comments. Okay. We currently have Bob Berry and Carlton Cave serving as chair and vice chair respectively, and they have served and represented this board for a number of years and done a great job. Unfortunately, those two gentlemen and Jimmy Smalley have met the end of their term for serving on our board, and this will be their last board meetings. So with that change, we're going to need to elect new chair and vice chair to go forward.
I thought it just got appointed for another 2 years.
And then into this. Yep, we were able to get you 1 year.
Time flies when they're having fun.
It does go quick. Does go quick. So, all right, so we have that. Any other changes to the agenda we need to make? Okay, we'll go forward. We don't have a copy of the minutes. The last meeting we had was 18 months ago, and quite honestly, approving those minutes at this point would seem a little inappropriate, so we went ahead and did those offline and have those available on our website, and you can check those out. All right, so we're going to start with DOE comments. There's a presentation in your packet under tab 2. This is a standard part of our board meetings where Jeremy will talk to us about what's going on site. Jeremy, would you rather do questions at the end or as you go? What's your preference?
We can just do them as we go. If something pops up, you've got a question, just
All right.
flag me down.
Floor is yours, buddy.
You want to just do
We've got it. Yeah.
Okay. As we've already said, my name is Jeremy Davis. I've been out the plant about 20 years, working in the nuclear industry. I've worked for subcontractors, the American Centrifuge Project, and now working for the department for the last 6 years, and now the acting site lead. I'm a lifelong resident of Pike County. I actually grew up on Marcus Run Road, which is just not very far from here as the crow flies. I have a bachelor's degree in natural science with focus areas in biology, chemistry, and geology. I've got experience at the plant doing project management, environmental compliance, hazardous waste management, and environmental program integration. So I'm also a certified hazardous materials manager, CHMM, and a project management professional. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to be the acting site lead, not only to help influence change and cleanup, but also from a local standpoint, ensuring that we as the department do a good job of ensuring that we leave something behind for reindustrialization. So I'm really excited for this opportunity, and I'm excited about being on this board and hearing what you guys have to say about the cleanup mission, and hopefully we can work together to make that mission a success. So thank you for letting me be here. If you don't know the site very well, I know some of the folks in the room know it pretty well, so I'll keep this brief. 3,700 acre facility. Uranium enrichment operations began in 1954. The DOE cleanup mission began in 1989. I was hired in 2002 when Bechtel Jacobs was the prime cleanup mission contractor at that time, and then we began full-scale D&D in 2010. So 2010 was the beginning of the FBP contract. So now, as you guys are well aware, we've seen the fruits of some of the labor the last 10 years with being able to actually perform the first process building demolition out of the site. So things to keep in mind as we work through this is, this was a Cold War facility that was built in 1954. Its primary focus then was nuclear defense. And then post-Cold War, the focus was commercial nuclear power, then environmental cleanup. That cleanup mission has, hosted, a lot of, challenges as well as successes, and we're starting to see a lot of that success pay off. Especially as we bring people into the site and give them site tours, they're pretty impressed with the amount of progress that's been made, and that's part and parcel to the input from the SSAB, our community stakeholders, the department, our laborers, our workforce, and we're starting to see a lot of progress being made. So, next slide. So, primary focus is deactivation, demolition, disposal, and cleanup. Complete deactivation and demolition of the 326, 333, and 330 process buildings. As you guys are aware, those are the three main process buildings there on the site. The 326 is about 91% complete as of today. We're getting very close to completion of that demolition and actually having the building physically onto the slab and ready for disposition over the cell. We also are completing the construction of the on-site waste disposal facility. That is where we're going to put all that material from the demolition, and that will be where it is managed in perpetuity. We also intend to excavate the landfills and plumes within Perimeter Road. As you guys are aware, whenever you're placing debris in a cell like that, you need a lot of soil. So based on feedback from community stakeholders and the commitment by the department, they've committed to cleaning up those landfills and plumes within Perimeter Road and use that soil for placement of that material in the OSWF, which from a local standpoint is a huge win because those landfills and plumes will allow for reindustrialization of that site and also eliminate the source, eliminate to the point reasonable the source term that exists there. So that's a huge win for the department and a huge win for the community. We also are starting that land transfer over to SODI. SODI has already received 82 acres, 80 acres in parcel 1. Parcel 2 transfer is imminent. We had the environmental baseline study just recently approved, and then parcel 3 hopefully by the end of the year. So those are, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, part of the reason I was on here is to maintain the infrastructure, maybe look to the future for some other, things to come in here. How's that look? We're still maintaining the infrastructure?
Yes, we are still maintaining
like the railroad, the water, all that.
Yep. So Rail is being maintained. We still maintain a spur from Norfolk and Southern. We did just recently have a significant repair that's required to use that, but we utilize that for the Duff 6 operations. That's where we make shipments in and out through that rail spur. The on-site rail is maintained as we need it right now for the Duff 6 mission, and then, you know, whatever it takes to maintain that spur inlet to the
We're
to
still
the site.
maintaining so much electric and water.
That's correct. Yeah, that's
Are
correct.
there temporary fences are put up now, right?
There are temporary fences around the 326 area. As you guys are aware, as we progress through the demolition and deactivation, we remove things out of the limited area. Once a facility is deactivated, a lot of the security requirements go away. So they do temporary fencing to fence out those areas to allow the workers to be in there and do
So you have a lot of things. I know they're working on the 333. That'll be the next one, but I hear the 30's got quite a bit of material in it. Used to be like L cage and vault and different places.
No, the L cage was actually in the 326 facility, and it's already been removed.
I used to work it.
Yeah, a lot of the material from the 326 was moved into the 330 as part of the deactivation effort.
Are they still using the G too?
Yes, the G is 744G is still being used. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard there was quite a bit of material in the 30 building. That has to be removed at a certain time, right?
January 23. Yeah. So that's one of our big focuses for FEP is to get that material off site by January of 2023. So good questions. All right, next slide. So you've got 4 main contractors there at the site right now. The reason this slide is here, there's been some updates since probably the last time you guys had a meeting. 4B&W is the prime deactivation and demolition contractor. So they supply project management, facility modification. Their big lift is the deactivation and the decommissioning of the facilities, getting ready for demolition. They've got about 1,800 employees. You also have Northwind Dynamics, so it used to be PMA. Now they are the infrastructure and site management contractor, so we say roads and grounds, just for lack of a better term. They also provide security support, records management, fleet management, IT, and they've got around 200 employees. So that's a new contractor that's been put in place since the last time you guys met. Mid-America Conversion Services, they are the operating contractor for both the Portsmouth and the Paducah depleted uranium hexafluoride plant. So that plant is currently in operation in Paducah, and then the Portsmouth plant is currently doing their readiness assessment to prepare resume operations over there. So you also have ETAS, Environmental Technical Assistance Services. They are direct support contractor to DOE. So you know, they provide technical support, project management, budget, finance, that kind of thing. And they've got about 55 employees. Next slide. Why get a drink of water? Is it hot in here? Is it just me?
It's a little warm.
All right. So 326 process building demo. We'll give you guys a quick update. That demolition actually began in May of 2021. The demolition is on target for completion by July of 2022. We are on target to meet that commitment. As you can see from that bottom picture, that is a significant amount of debris that's sitting on that slab. That is all the building debris from the demolition of the facility. So there's about 135,000 cubic yards of debris. That debris, as they do that demolition, gets size reduced and gets sheared, and then it gets transferred up to the OSWF for placement along with that soil. And they do that in a grid type fashion to create the infrastructure they need to support the cap that will eventually go on the OSWF. So as you progress down that pad, that material gets smaller and smaller. You'll notice that green tint that you see on that. That's the fixative that gets applied to that material once it's been put on the ground. So I'll flip over to the next slide. We'll kind of talk about that schedule. So this kind of gives you, I like this graphic because it kind of gives you a timeline of how that demolition progressed. This is a little outdated, the overhead is, but Gives you kind of an idea of how that progressed through the beginning of the demolition. You'll see that south end of the pad is clear. That is clear because of the waste that we actually placed last summer, and we have resumed placement operations this summer and are currently placing waste from that 326 footprint in the OSWDF. Next slide. So the demolition safety planning was a big deal. We wanted to create a safe and methodical demolition plan that was approved by Ohio, but before it actually went to Ohio, it went through a lot of evaluation, comment resolution, because we were able to take a lot of lessons learned that was actually pulled from other sites, Hanford, Oak Ridge, Fernald. We have a lot of the expertise there at the plant of folks that have worked in those areas. So I actually had the opportunity to go to the Hanford site and look at the OSWDF operations before we actually started operations there at the OSWDF. But pulling those lessons learned allowed us to create what we felt like was a really good strategy to perform that demolition. So when we talk about deactivation, that's actually going into that facility and removing the high hazard materials from that facility. So if you worked in the 326, you realize that was the upper end of the cascade. That was where the high assay material was actually enriched. So we went in that facility, removed a lot of the process gas equipment, some of the piping that didn't meet the criticality index required to be able to be put in the OSWDF. That material was subsequently shipped off-site for disposition, which allowed us to be ready for the demolition of that facility. The next step was to remove the transite panels off the outside of that building, because as you guys are aware, that's an asbestos-containing material, and it had to be removed separately, not during demolition, because of the type of asbestos material it actually is. Yes?
Another question.
Yep.
Filling in for Dennis now. We've had a lot of rain.
Yes, sir.
And I used to work 705 microfiltration. How's this water treatment working with all the rain we've had? I know you have to treat all the water that comes out of there.
That's correct. So there is a berm that exists around the 326 facility that captures not only water that comes in due to the rain, but also the water that we actually spray on the demolition as we're performing. So right now, we've not approached any thresholds for treatment capacity at the facility.
It's working well?
Yeah, it's working well.
Particulates you have, the particulates are small, and you don't, it's in good shape.
Yeah,
The effluent's in good shape.
It is in good shape, and actually our results before it goes through the treatment have been pretty good.
Oh.
So the biggest thing is, that treatment train was designed to capture, back-to-back storm events. So we had a lot of rain this past spring. Right. So
that's always one of Dennis's concerns.
One of our biggest rainfalls that we had, I think it was in February, if I remember correctly. We did see some water in that berm for about 18 hours. So, but they were able to get that pumped down and get that through the treatment.
So this is a mobile unit, you can move it from process building to process building?
It is semi-mobile. It will be used for all the different facilities that get demolished there at the site. It is modular, I'll say, in that regard, because if you drive down there and look at that structure, you're like, that looks pretty permanent to me, because it has a sprung structure over it, it has a concrete slab, it has secondary container around the entire treatment train, which is what's required for Ohio EPA. Right. So, but that material, or that treatment equipment could actually be picked up and moved to another concrete slab and used again. So, but yeah, so lots of training goes into play. Jody and Herman could probably talk at length about a lot of that, but both of our unions that are supporting this effort go through extensive amounts of training to be able to actually perform this work. It includes the protective measures to minimize all the disturbances or any residual radiological and chemical contaminants. So you look at that picture right there, you see two of the misters that are used. Those are used constantly while they're actually doing the work. And then obviously we're going to talk about in the next slide some of the environmental monitoring that we have in place during the demolition. Next slide. So the big thing, open air demolition, we always think about air monitoring. So the air monitoring network consists of kind of two main priorities. You have the air program monitoring, and then you have the project specific monitoring. So I'll point out on the map on the right, the dots represent air program monitoring equipment, and the stars in and around the 326 building, which is kind of in the center of that red box there, is the project specific monitoring. So throughout the whole site, we have 176 air monitors at 45 different locations. We have equipment on site and off site. Now that includes the programmatic air monitoring that's in place. So the project specific air monitoring includes things like particulate matter, real-time radiological monitoring, and that is used during demolition to kind of look at the strategies that they're doing during that demolition to make sure that they are being effective. So if you think about particulate matter, that's how you measure dust, right? So the PM10 monitoring is real time. They get hour by hour feedback during demolition. They're actually able to say, oh, we're seeing a little elevated reading in our PM10 monitoring, and they can say we need to put more water in the face of the demolition, or we need some more fixative on these piles. So that project air monitoring is all those little dots that you see in and around the 326 building. So that monitoring measures particulate matter, and there's also real-time monitoring for radiological constituents. So there's things called ICAMs. Yes?
Do you still have your radiation monitors? I know every process building and every, building around it had air, I used to check those out too.
Yeah, so the
Radiation
326, that would have been all removed during deactivation.
Still have them in the other two?
But you have them in the other facilities, that's correct. Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about the criticality access alarm systems.
Right.
Yeah.
CAS.
Yep, so they're still covered under the other facilities.
I noticed it wasn't mentioned here.
Yep.
That's a good thing to have.
Yeah, it is, but as you're aware, we couldn't do the deactivation with that equipment in there.
Right.
They're pretty expensive, so. Project-specific monitoring, when you guys think of that, think about that's not only being used to protect the workers, but it's also ensuring that demolition strategies and the dust mitigation strategies that are being deployed at the time are effective. So that real-time feedback is what we depend on, and that was one of the lessons learned that we've learned from other sites, is that real-time monitoring helps you adjust your strategy as you proceed down that demolition path. So that's been very valuable. And as we've gotten closer to the end, it's becoming even more valuable because they're able to focus that dust mitigation tactic right at the face of the demolition and control that dust right where at the project boundary. So I think that's any questions on that? I know it's a lot. All right, next slide. So that air monitoring network, one of the things that we committed to was to share the results with the public. So we have had some virtual public meetings. My first act as acting site lead was to be a part of one of those, which was really kind of cool because one of the things that we're able to do is take that data, because you can feed data out, but what does it mean, right? So we use that public meeting forum to explain to folks, okay, here's what we're seeing and here's what this means. We use several of our subject matter experts on those public meetings to kind of help explain the stuff. So they get that data published. There's a couple websites there. You have the Ports Demo website, which posts the weekly, monthly, and quarterly data. And then you have the ACER report that comes out, which, as you guys are aware, is a little bit delayed, but we also have Pegasus, which is another forum where people can access that data for the air monitoring. The one thing I forgot to mention about the air monitoring program, we do now have co-located air monitoring. So we worked with the Ohio Department of Health and Ohio EPA to put co-located air monitoring. So why is that important? Well, it's important from the standpoint it provides independent verification of the data that not only we're seeing, but they get independently from us. So we do comparative analysis with Ohio Department of Health, Ohio EPA, and that data all gets published on those websites. What that does for us is it shows, hey, are they seeing the same things that we are? So that gives the public, some, support in knowing that DOE is seeing the same thing that independent air monitors are also seeing. So that was a big win for us, because hopefully it builds trust with the local community.
And they get it right from some machine reading, and you guys don't get
Yeah,
it
I
or do
think
anything with it before it goes to them?
No, they have their own laboratory, they get their own data feed. We don't actually look at the data until we do that comparative analysis and say, hey, we got 0.05, you guys got 0.06. Okay, that's within the threshold, that's fine. What they try to do is work to say, okay, what happened? So what that allows us to do is to have that, not only that independent verification, but it also helps us in regard to being able to discuss those things openly with our stakeholders. So,
And that was the Ohio Department of Health?
yeah, Ohio Department of Health is the radiological air monitoring. They own that program, and the Ohio EPA, they monitor things like metals, fluorides, things like that. So, good question. All right, next slide. Have you guys got to go out to the site lately?
We did.
Yeah. So
We toured the south.
yeah, the big brown buildings with all the air monitoring sticking out of them?
We
that's
talked
the
about that
co-located.
when we drove by, but we
Yeah.
also did the cell.
Yeah.
Next slide. So.
Yeah, all right. So OSWDF, there's actually a co-located air monitor just west of those buildings right there. So when we talk about the OSWDF, the thing that we always want to emphasize is the fact that this facility was designed with a 1,000-year feasibility study, right? So we wanted to be sure that this material would stay in place for 1,000 years. So when you look at this design, the OSWDF is truly an engineered disposal site. It has a multi-layer liner. So most sanitary landfills have a single liner. This has a multi-layer liner. It actually has 2 plastic liners where most sanitary landfills will only have 1. Ours is twice the thickness of a regular landfill. So when you look at things like this, these are important to you guys because it helps people understand that this is something that is designed, engineered, and also you consider that when we do this placement, we do it in a way where we get the compaction that's required to ensure that that material stays immobile. That's really important for burial. So that cap system is designed to consolidate demolition debris. We're going to be putting the rubble in there. And if you can imagine, when we talk about 3,700 acre facility, inside that perimeter road, you're still talking about 1,000 acres. With the buildings that we're going to be removing, you're talking about 400 to 500 acres. We're consolidating that into a 100 acre footprint of the OSWDF. Now, OSWDF proper is about 300 acres when you consider all the support structures that go in with it. But as you can imagine, we're really reducing that source point for what will remain in perpetuity. So that engineered cell is designed to accommodate more than 5 million cubic yards of waste, which is enough to hold all the facilities that are slated for demolition at this time. We even have an extra 2 cells proposed in the engineered design should we need extra capacity. So that ends up being 12 cells total. We only think it'll take 10, but we have 2 extra just in case. So one process building takes approximately 3 cells. So right now we have cells 1, 4, and 5 are in operation, and that's where we're placing the 326 demolition debris right now. So, next question, or next slide, excuse me. So contaminated plume excavation. Last summer, we started on the X740 plume excavation. That excavation is complete. We were able to deliver over 40,000 cubic yards of soil and fill to the OSWDF for placement of the debris from last year. So that soil gets used, like I said before, to provide compaction and fill for debris disposal at the OSWDF. And the 740 plume, that plume was actually a trichloroethylene plume. So trichloroethylene is a solvent that was used during the Cold War. It was readily used. It was also, dumped out on the ground before they realized it was a carcinogen. So that was one of the areas that we actually went in. We dug up all the soil to reduce the source term. We actually put clean soil back in. So that was a big success. We've already initiated this year the 231B Plume excavation. That's currently in progress. That was a bioremediation area. So that was an oil bioremediation area. And that excavation is anticipated to be complete the summer of 2022. So if you're familiar with the 326, that was between the 326 and then the 626 cooling tower. So that will give us, that 231B excavation will give us enough soil to place the remainder of the 326 debris that's on the slab. So, next slide.
I'd like to just, so talk about landfills and plumes earlier. So when you look at the kind of orange color, that's the perimeter road that we were on for the tour. And inside of there, when you think about reindustrialization, if you look and all the purple and all the yellow pieces are left in there, you really have like a piece of Swiss cheese when you're trying to redevelop it. By digging up the landfills and plumes inside of perimeter road, you're giving yourself an opportunity for contiguous land for development, which is important to projects that want to come here. And it's also reducing the time that would have to be, you have to wait on it to be cleaned up, and we need it for the disposal cells. So that's why it's a win, is ultimately what most people in the community care about is, at the end of this whole thing, can we use it? And all those landfills and plumes, you would be snaking around. When you remove them, you've got a much more usable, contiguous piece of land to redevelop. And so that's why it's important from the community's perspective, was what are you leaving us? And without removing them, you're leaving them a piece of Swiss cheese.
So Greg, that plume, that trichloric plume is pretty much contained to the plant site? If that's as far south as it's went right there?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's not left the property boundary. But you may be aware, Jim, the current remediation tactic is pump and treat, which is very costly. And it's effective, but it doesn't do a real good job of removing that source term, where that remediation will actually remove that source term.
So some of the material is pulling out of like clay content, so the water doesn't move well. And so we used to report how many gallons of trichloroethylene we pulled out. When you pull out millions of gallons of groundwater and treat it, and you end up pulling out 15 or 20 gallons of trichloroethylene, it takes a long time to get rid of it.
Yeah.
You dig up the source, then it starts.
It's not really soluble as water, is it? I mean, it was a degreaser, so it's like kerosene and water.
Right, but they do run it through the stripping, basic carbon stripping, to strip it out.
Yeah, it becomes emulsified in the water, basically. So there's the like Greg was saying, the clay actually benefited because those plumes don't spread, whereas other sites, you saw those plumes spread much quicker. But clay doesn't seem to.
I remember back when I first hired in there behind the feed plant there in the 744G, they had several outfits in there trying to work on that in situ.
Yeah,
they got in there and done, I don't know how many
701B.
times that's been worked on.
Yeah, we've worked on it a couple times. Next time we're gonna go in and do the same thing like we did with the 740 soil excavation. So that'll probably be one of the larger soil excavation that goes on.
Right.
All right, next slide. So the next facility ready for demolition will be the 333 process building. So this was the low end of the cascade. This was where the process was initiated. So it's the largest of the 3 process buildings. It's currently undergoing deactivation. There's about 66 acres of floor space when you count both floors. So you got 33 acres and 33 acres. So I remember when I first hired in, walking in this building, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the biggest place I've ever been in my life. So one of the things that's going on there right now is that hazard removal. So they're going in there right now, they're taking out the converters and compressors, they're sending them through a non-destructive analysis technique called LCAS. They take the converter apart, they remove the bundle that's inside, because we're storing those for potential future reuse or recycle, and those are being stored, and then the material is actually being put back in the building that will be ready for demolition. So that disassembly helps us not only in reducing that source term, but also ensuring that that material is already starting to be size reduced before the actual demolition takes place. So lots of work has been done in that facility. We are right now, the workers you see on the bottom are doing a mock-up of one of those bundle wrapping operations. So the internals of that converter get wrapped and then placed in a container and stored. until
And you'll
we-
reuse those, or
That's
possibly
the
reuse those?
potential.
And there's nothing,
Recycle,
Yeah.
not using them for their current use.
Yeah.
But to recycle, and the metal, is valued as nickel.
Nickel, yeah. So there's a lot of discussions about that right now. There's nickel at all 3 sites that had gaseous diffusion. So right now, it's too valuable to throw it in the OSWDF. So everybody's held on to their nickel, and hopefully at some point we'll find a way to actually recycle the material.
So does all the transite go in those over there?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. The panels themselves get placed first. They get placed in the bottom of the cell in like a grid pattern, and that creates a nice base for when we're getting ready to place the debris.
You don't cut them up, you put them in there?
Nope, can't cut them up.
Well, you get more airborne.
Yeah, you get more airborne that way. So they get double wrapped, just like regular ACM. They've already got fixative sprayed on both sides of the panel, double wrapped, placed in the cell in a grid type pattern. Soil's packed in around them, compaction, and then we start putting debris on top of them. So that creates another buffer layer to protect that liner that's already in place. So it's really an interesting orchestra of events to watch them actually place that material. It's very strategic. So next slide. This slide is a picture of the depleted uranium hexafluoride conversion facility. So the DUF6 mission, during the enrichment operations, you were left with a depleted waste stream. So you have depleted uranium hexafluoride stored in cylinders out there at the site. So that mission there is to take those cylinders into that facility. They run them through what they call a fluidized bed reaction, and they separate out the HF, or the hexafluoric acid, and the uranium oxides that are left inside that container. So the HF actually gets sold in the open market. It's clean. It's a product material, and then the oxide material is loaded back into a modified cylinder. And I'm happy to report we had our first successful reuse of 55-gallon drums of that oxide material through NNSA. But hopefully at some point we will disposition the remaining oxide off-site. So that material will not go into the OSWDF. Next slide. Future Portsmouth site. So the site reuse mission, as Greg pointed out on the map, we're in kind of that southeast quadrant of the perimeter road. DOE is implementing this systematic approach to turn that land over to SODI. Like everybody heard the announcement, SODI has their first potential reuse organization who's interested in doing a hydrogen cell facility there. The parcels are being transferred. Parcel 1 was 80 acres, that's already been transferred. Parcel 2 is 227 acres, as you can see on the right-hand side. It includes some area outside of Perimeter Road. That area was not used by DOE at any time that I can remember. And then Parcel 3 is 48 acres. And you kind of see it's kind of spotty, but that 48 acres hopefully will be turned over by the end of the year. SODI is working pretty diligently to find industry and companies that are interested in reusing the site. And honestly, as a local person, that's one of the things I like to see. Somebody who's willing to come in here and create good jobs for the workforce. So, next slide. So, community commitment plan. So all of our prime contractors, develop some type of community commitment plan. I want to touch on a little bit what that means. It's a part of Ford B&W's D&D contract at Portsmouth. It will also be a part of the upcoming contract. That focuses on 4 main areas: educational outreach, regional purchasing, community giving, and economic development. So educational outreach, you think of things like the Science Bowl, Science Alliance, STEM programs, things like that. FEP is actively supporting those programs to get, also the ACER program is another great example. Every year they provide the environmental data to a local high school. They work in conjunction with Ohio University, and 5 of those students get an opportunity to rewrite that report. And I'll say everyday terms that everybody can understand, and it's been a great successful program. Also regional purchasing, so part of those prime contracts, they have to buy so much from local small businesses. That's been a huge success. One of the most recent successes was they needed loading shields at the OSWF. When they backed the trucks in, they wanted to ensure that if debris didn't get into the truck, it didn't fall on the sides of the truck. So they would have to later go back and clean that material off. So they actually worked with a local business who made these shields, I guess, for lack of a better term, so that they could back those in there, and that was a big success. So anytime we can encourage that regional purchasing, that's a part of their contract, and they're committed to do that. So not only that, but community giving and economic development. So at this time, over 16,000 students have participated in different educational outreach programs. $550 million has been committed to local companies for goods and services, and $2.9 million has been donated by Ford B&W and employees to local charitable organization, and $4.9 million has been invested to create and retain jobs since 2011. So it's a huge thing. Yes, sir.
Is there any guidance from DOE on the community commitment plans, or is that something that they just kind of offer up and evaluate it?
It has to be drafted, and then it's submitted to the department and they review it. But I'm not sure what the exact criteria are.
It's not just, they just make up stuff, and
No.
that sounds bad, just make up stuff and throw it in there, but it's kind of, I'm just curious if the Department of Energy had gave any specific plans related to direction for reindustrialization and that type of thing, things that would support reindustrialization.
I don't know the exact answer, Herman. I'll have to look into that. So I'm not sure what the criteria actually are. But I know it gets reviewed by the department before it's approved. So it's part of their contract submission. So I think that's my last slide.
Well done.
Questions? Okay.
Hey, as Jeremy was talking through, just wanted to kind of point out, we have a lot of folks that this is their first go around with this, right? And so a lot of what Jeremy talked about sounded like it was just DOE work, right? It was tearing down buildings and putting waste into a waste cell, the OSWF. It was setting aside materials that might be useful in recycling. It was digging up landfills and plumes. It was community giving and stuff. And all of those things were items that the SSAB in its 12-year history now has done recommendations on and gone in depth in discussions with DOE about how they prefer these actions to take place, right? And while I don't want to delve off into it now, I would really like to, in the next couple of months, spend some time with you guys and talk about what your predecessors on the SSAB, the discussions that took place, the recommendations that came out, how it affects the decisions and the direction that Jeremy is making now based on the input, and where we have opportunities for you guys to provide input that's going to make, changes and help focus and drive us to success and clean up for the next decade, right? Because a lot of what he talked about tonight were all things that were kind of subcommittee topics for previous versions of the SSAB, and that you guys provided and your predecessors provided input and advice on, and DOE listened, and we had these discussions and kind of went together from. So just wanted to kind of highlight that sometimes, sometimes that story gets lost a little bit. All right, Greg, Federal Coordinator.
How about we move on, and I'll give them for the only time in their whole tenure.
Oh my goodness.
But we do need to get the.
So normally we would have Greg come in right now and he would provide us some input and talk about what's going on, especially from a community perspective with DOE. We would follow that up with liaison comments. Under normal meeting circumstances, we would have representatives from OEPA and ODH here, and they are vital parts of this board, right? Their input, the ability for you guys to ask questions and engage them, and to have that relationship and the relationship between the regulators and DOE is critical to the success of the site, and you guys are engaged in that discussion on a regular basis. So we'll skip past Federal Coordinator and liaison comments, and now we go to election of board chair and vice chair. Okay, so a lot of this is up to you guys. You guys get to lead the discussion. All right, so what's it mean to be chair and vice chair of the board, right? Within your operating procedures, we lay out a handful of specifics that we ask the chair to do, right? Typically, we would have this election in September, but because of current membership status, we have to change. Basically, the chair and vice chair will certify all minutes. After we voted on and approved, we put their signature, says they certify it. We have to do that within 45 days of the previous board meeting. We ask, but it's not a requirement, that the chair and vice chair participate in the national meetings. We have 2 a year. Occasionally some additional phone calls throughout the year in prep and planning. The next national meeting will be in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Spring of next year is Oak Ridge. If you're available, it's usually about a week. We ask that the chair and vice chair travel to that. They'll represent the board as we go and see the other sites and the other boards like us around the country. There are 7 other boards besides the Portsmouth board. Occasionally, something spur of the minute pops up, and Jeremy will need to talk to someone, and the chair, the vice chair is typically his go-to is hey, I'm relaying this to you on behalf of the board. The chair normally relays it to us, and we pass it out to everyone else. But that's kind of the common flow of information. Yeah, that's really kind of the assigned duties. Bob, Carlton, any other significant duty? Have to put up with me. That's probably the biggest task. Anything you want to add on the role of chair, vice chair?
No, it's mostly going to the national meetings. A lot of times you'll leave on Monday, you'll be back by Friday evening. It is a very interesting opportunity to get to go to those. There are 7 other sites that attend, and quite different mostly than what our site is, except for Paducah. But I always found it very interesting to go, and the people you meet and things you learn. Attending the meetings here, the public board meetings, the committee meetings. And I tried to go to the Science Alliance a couple times to try to participate in the quiz bowl and help out there. Just felt if I was going to be the chair, then I should try to participate in all the activities which they had. Like I said, occasionally you had to come out to the plant. Ike White came last year, and he's the EM1 right now, invited us out, and we had an opportunity to speak with him. And, you wouldn't, something like that you don't have to go to, but, it was a unique opportunity to talk to the, number 2 person in, the department, and, get input from them, and I really enjoyed it, enjoyed being chair, and I think anyone would if he would, just really give it a chance.
Carlton, anything you want to add?
No, I think Bob was very thorough. Just make sure that you have the time to commit to making the meetings. It's very important. I believe that if you're going to be the chair and vice chair, that you know what is going on in all of the committee meetings. So the only way you're going to have that opportunity to know is to be there. So just make sure that you have the time commitment, So that's about it. But I think once you get involved and you become involved, you'll find it very rewarding. That's all. Perfect.
Okay. So other than that, it's really up to you guys on how you want to go through this process. We'll walk through it. We can take nominations. We can vote on blank piece of paper. We can do this however you're most comfortable, right? There's really no wrong way to do this. What I will encourage you to do is take a look at your agenda under tab 1. On the left-hand side of the page is a list of board members. If you put a happy little star next to Carlton Cave, Bob Berry, and Jimmy Smalley, because they are terming out, they are ineligible to serve as chair and vice chair. So it's it's Bob at the top, Carlton on the second line, and then Jimmy Smalley down a little bit. Everyone else technically is eligible to serve, right? So I know for some of you this is your first meeting and you're thinking, what in the world? But quite honestly, we have a history of doing that to the chair, so that's okay. Folks that have been on the board for a short term, 4 years in, we have Jody Crabtree, Term Helton, who's not here tonight. He's have some health issues in the family he's dealing with his mother-in-law. So thoughts and prayers with them. Becky Jo Kent and Dr. Todd Burkett have all been on the board. This will be their 4th year. They'll be going in their 5th and 6th year. So, so they have a little experience. Just so you know, the others listed are all part of this new class. So with that, looking for suggestion, are you guys, how do you want to handle this? Yes.
Let me ask a question, Eric. Did any of those not present state the purpose to maybe want to be board president or vice, or did they have to be present?
They don't have to be present.
So did any of them state that they would, like, nominate me?
I don't want to lead the group.
No.
I have had discussions with Bob, who has told me that, well, actually, Bob, I'm not going to speak for you. I'll let you talk. I'm sorry.
No, well, usually we just have open nominations.
Okay.
And then we have a public hands up, hands down. Anybody can be nominated and anyone can nominate anyone on the board. You know, so if I nominate somebody, you want to nominate somebody, free to do so, we'll vote. The popular vote wins.
Shouldn't we say though, who would like to do it? I mean, I think that's what they were asking you,
That's
has
what they're
anybody
asking.
expressed
So
interest?
I've heard interest as he looks away from Jody and from Term Helton. Neither one are actively seeking, but both willing to serve. Is that fair?
That's a fair statement.
Fair statement. And so,
What's the term?
1 year.
1 year.
1 year. And then we will elect again. So, and I think Jody said he would be willing to carry us through a year until somebody else was ready. But he's going to get in. If he gets in, he's going to be willing to do too.
I'll nominate Jody.
All right, so we have a nomination
I'll
for Jody.
second that
We
nomination.
have a second.
I accept.
Are there any other nominations?
Now, does Dr. Burkett show an interest? Does he show an interest, or
I have not talked to him in quite some
you
time.
don't know?
I'm getting a head shake from the side, Jimmy.
No.
I'm getting a head shake from the side.
Really?
So, all right, any other nominations? All right, those in favor of voting for Jody Crabtree to serve as board chair for the coming year, please raise your right hand. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those opposed? Abstentions? So we have a 7-0-1 vote. Jody, congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Cannot tell you how great of a chair he's going to be.
Okay.
He's going to do a fantastic job. All right, so in the event, it's like you appoint Miss America and then you have the runner-up, just in case not able to fulfill the duties thereof, or something like that. So we do need a.
I'm sorry, Jody.
We do need
I found that
a
funny,
vice
too.
chair that Jody can assign all duties to. So, looking for a nomination for vice chair.
So can we nominate a newer member?
You can nominate whoever you would like.
Anybody on the board, other than us three.
I'll nominate Herman.
I'll say it.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
You got a second for Herman? Are there any other nominations? All right, seeing none, I'm looking for a vote. All those in favor for Herman to serve as vice chair for the upcoming year, please raise your right hand. That's 7. All those opposed? Abstentions? So we got 7-0-1. Herman, congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
All right, look
You
forward.
know, winning an election without anybody running against you is kind of scary.
You're the shooter.
I'd take that any day.
There's probably a comment about Pike County elections in there, but I'm not sure I want to make it right now, so we'll wait and let that slide. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
And thank you for allowing us to move forward. I know Jody was having to sneak out a little bit earlier. All right.
So Eric, I will say something real quick, just, it is awesome to see people that are willing to serve on this board. Because I know it takes out of your time from your personal life and things like that. And I know some of you in this room have a pretty arduous personal life, and it's awesome to see people from the community that are willing to do this.
They do feed you sometimes.
They do?
That's a biggie on that.
That's good. But thank you. So thank you. Thank you.
Kind of like being marshal in the Old West. Here's a badge, we vote for you. Get out there.
All right, so under administrative issues, we have 3 recommendations to look at tonight. So recommendations are our formal process of communicating with the Department of Energy. Typically, recommendations are formed out of this group, and they would go directly to Jeremy, and they would have to do with what's going on at the Portsmouth site, right? And so that's what we kind of alluded to those earlier. We talk about, everything from community commitment plans to Science Alliance and educational outreach to, maybe what you find as necessary to accept on-site waste disposal, right? All things we've done recommendations on the past. We also do recommendations from the national meetings, right? Chair and vice chair from each of the 8 boards get together. They talk about topics that impact all the sites across the DOE complex. And then they write recommendations collectively, take it back to their individual boards, and then we kind of do a thumbs up, thumbs down vote on whether or not we want our chair and vice chair to sign off on these recommendations. So that's the process we're going through tonight.
Who's the recipient of these recommendations?
So these recommendations are sent to Ike White, who is EM1, who would be, for those not from DOE or in the military, he's the lead DOE official within the environmental management program, right? So he is Jeremy's boss's boss's boss, right? Maybe a couple layers more than that. It gets convoluted on the org chart, but it's the buck stops with him in the EM program. So these are directly to him. So about 18 months ago, Ike White asked the chairs at the national meeting to provide input on 2 issues, right? And we called them the charges to the chairs. The first one, charge 1, asked about best practices on DOE's community commitment plan and their outreach efforts. So we made a spreadsheet of all the different things that DOE, its contractors, or any organization affiliated with the Portsmouth site did as an outreach to the community, right? It was several pages long, and we kind of went through it and looked and talked about all the different things, educational opportunities, financial giving opportunities, quarterly public meetings, all the things that we did to engage the community, right? And then from that, we were asked to come up with what we thought were our best 2 or 3 items, what we did best, and what were areas that we had for improvement. So at the time, the board, you got the next slide, Julie?
Eric, I apologize for my.
No, it's good.
Like I said, I got.
Thanks, Jody. We ran him off.
Chair's prerogative, right?
We'll catch it.
All right, so do you have the second slide on chairs charge 1, Julie?
Eric, this was the only slide
Oh, okay. So, all right, so under chairs charge 1, we listed what we thought were the top issues that the local site did well. We talked about Science Alliance and community outreach. We talked about the response to the Zahn's Corner, or Zahn's Middle School fallout and the things with that. And we, from that, created kind of a list that we took to headquarters, right? All the other sites brought their own list, and we can provide that to you if you want, either the short list or the long list. The long compiled list is, probably 100 pages of different things, very similar from all the sites. The chairs compiled those and created a white paper. And that white paper is what you have in your packet under tab 3. Okay. So as you look at this, you'll see that this is written up as a letter to Ike White. It lays out the fact that this was a response to the chair's charge, and provides a background as to what we've done and who we are as the SSAB. There's a list of observations that the folks working on this found that were kind of commonalities through all the lists. And that is what we have provided as the white paper to go forward. Now, this was passed by the other 7 boards in the fall of 2021. At the time, the Ports SSAB did not have a full-body membership, and so we weren't meeting. So we couldn't vote to adopt it. Headquarters has already accepted this and is preparing to move forward with this. All the other boards have voted yes concurrently and have gone forward and said if we would like, we can pass it, and then they will add our concurrence post date to it. So that's really what we're looking at on this one is not only has this been accepted, but actions are taking place out of it by DOE. It's just a matter of whether or not we want, I guess at this point technically, Jody to sign off and say that we as a board, the Portsmouth SSAB, concurs with this recommendation.
Are these annually done, or are they done by direction?
So this was done by direction. I suspect you will see these semi-regularly going forward. It received a good response. It handled things well. But we don't have a current charge right now that the national group is working on.
Okay.
Any questions on the process or what's in this before we go forward? Bob Carlton, you were involved all the steps of this. Anything you want to add?
No, sir.
Is there an evaluation process once these are put in place to go back and see how well you completed these items? Or?
That's a great question. And one of the things I think that I know the national chairs have asked about in the past is that we write these recommendations, DOE says, yes, this is great, but in the great bureaucracy of the world, sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. And so how do we know that this happens? Quite honestly, a couple of the recommendations this board wrote, it was 8-9 years before we got far enough into the OSWDF to actually implement some of the recommendations.
Look at number 6, Herman.
Yeah.
That kind of speaks to that.
It's at the bottom of page 3.
Yeah.
You know, this is testing my comprehensive skills.
I mean, basically, it said here that, you know, they have an expert come in and look at it quantitatively and qualitatively. So
Okay.
make sure that, you know, these things are being tracked and,
Okay.
and report back on it.
Because we know what, if it doesn't get tracked, it typically struggle to get it done, so.
And I think the point of step number 6 is DOE does formal audits on everything, except their community outreach, except their stakeholder engagement. And so why not ask similar things to be done?
Okay.
So, and I'm sure that's exactly what Jeremy wanted to hear, was more audits.
Well, and so I read through these, before the meeting. You know, if you look through this list too, you'll see things that have already been done.
Yes.
Things like the historical things, if you come into the Endeavor Center and walk through, you can walk around and see some of the historical stuff that, these things were done in an effort to provide education and background to people who are coming into the Environmental Information Center. So if you look through that list, you'll see some of these things have already been implemented. And then, as you know, these guys were alluding to, now we'll have somebody come in and audit us and make sure we do it. So Herman knows I love audits.
There's two
What?
things.
I haven't asked for any, okay?
No, you haven't. That is a fact.
You always have audits and acronyms.
That's it.
That's right.
That's how we live our lives.
There's a million acronyms on Plan C.
If I ever say an acronym and you don't know it, don't be afraid to say, what does that mean? Because I do that all the time.
So you want to entertain a motion to accept the recommendations?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendations.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion, questions? Normally at this point, we would pause and we would ask for public comment, specifically on this recommendation. If anybody in the audience, because discussion at meetings takes place just from the folks at the table. So if anybody in the audience felt really strongly about this, we would give them 1 minute to discuss whatever their issue or question or thought or support for this recommendation. Since we're behind closed doors right now due to COVID, we will not take public comment on this. But if you would like to provide a comment, please feel free to do it in writing to eric@pgpcap.org. So with that, we call for a vote on this. If you're in favor of allowing Jody to sign off on accepting this, please raise your right hand. That's 7. All those, there'd be no against, no abstentions. So 7-0. Thank you. All right, well done. Recommendation 1 under your belt. Look at it. We're an hour in. You guys are killing it. This is easy. All right. Recommendation 2 was a similar process, right? So charge 2 had to do with the document that was produced. And this one kind of changed midstream on us, but the final charge had to do with what DOE calls their 10-year strategic vision. And this is a document, Herman, that gets updated on an annual basis. So think of this, the strategic vision, as a high-level, almost a marketing piece for the EM program on what they're going to accomplish in the next 10 years, whatever 10-year gap that is, right? So it is something that they can take to Congress to show that they're managing their progress and they're being successful. It is something that you can show to members in the community that these are the high-level projects of what's going on and what we're seeing active work taking place in the next 10 years. And it also makes it kind of a manageable chunk to take a hold of. We can provide you copies of this if you guys want them. They're available digitally on our website, but I can get you hard copies if you want to see the hard copy of it. So we were asked to look at this. It was kind of a new thing and provide comment and feedback to DOE on what would make this a better piece, right? And so that's where we get the recommendations going forward.
On the recommendations on these items, some of the stuff is kind of general.
Yes.
Is it, I'm assuming it's specifically intended to be that way?
So you have 8 different boards, all representing different communities and different wants, needs, and concerns. So typically anything that would come out of the chairs meeting, and Bob, Carlton, you guys feel free to jump in on this, becomes a little more generic because it's gotta fit everybody, right? So it's more of a one-size-fits-all piece than a custom-made garment, right? And so you're gonna see things that are a little broader, a little more general, so that everybody could kind of agree to it.
So is these things that may be kind of a guideline for contractors to put more specific items in the bidding process for DOE's evaluation?
Not necessarily in the bidding process, but I think this had more to do with the actual 10-year strategic plan and how it was pulled together, how it is used. I think there was some information on maybe, it could be a document that could be good for public meetings. It could be, are you engaging your boards if this is such an important thing before you get there?
But it would be a good, it's a guideline for contractors in that sense. Okay.
Oh, okay, sure.
That's
yeah. And so from the previous, I haven't seen the 2022 version, the 2021, it might not be out yet. 2021, the Portsmouth, it's maybe 3/4 of a page, a couple pictures, and highlights very, we're tearing down buildings, we're putting waste and disposal cells.
For example, if you bear with me a little
Yes,
bit.
go ahead.
Since I'm gonna be vice chair, I need to know what I'm doing, and I'm watching my language too, so that helps.
That's good.
So, so on an item where it says DOE should support STEM program development, everybody supports STEM program development, but in the but if a contractor puts that in their annual contract, or DOE details as far as that, that's kind of what we're looking at.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Good deal. Other questions on this recommendation?
Need a motion?
Absolutely.
Does anybody else? I don't mind making a motion.
No, you're fine. You're
I
fine.
do it all the time. I'll make a motion to accept that as written.
All right.
I'll second.
All right, Bob seconded. Any questions or discussions? Again, if you'd like to provide comment or input on this, please don't hesitate to send it to us in writing. All right, all those in favor of accepting the recommendation on charge 2 as presented, please raise your right hand. That's 7, so there'll be no nays, no abstentions. All right, perfect. Okay, so the third recommendation is a little more complicated, right? So this came out of the chair's meeting, and essentially, Greg, can I get you to give us a 2-minute overview into the appointment process for a board member? So we have a membership package. We ask for applications. We give you guys a shout. We talk to folks in the community and say, who would be great? And they say, you got to call Amy Hawk and Matt Setter. We give you guys a shout, and we sweet talk you into saying, yeah, I'll send in an application. We take those applications, turn it into DOE, and then walk us through.
So we have, it's pretty bureaucratic, and we're looking at trying to make sure that our board is reflective of the community. So from the perspective of, and I believe we were the first site to really quantify this. We looked at census data. 2010 at the time was the latest census when we first put this together, but we look at how our community breaks down age-wise, education attainment-wise, sex, race, and then your interest areas, and make sure that we don't have a board that's heavily loaded in one area. We're interested only in this. And so we take the applications and we try to make sure that we fit as many of the different buckets as we can to have a balanced board that's reflective of the community. We have a recommendation that we send up then to headquarters. Headquarters will make an initial review, ask us if we had any others, who else was in there. They'll look at it, see if they agree with us. If they agree with us, it starts through a process that's literally about 30 steps of reviews. And it goes, just keeps going up the chain until ultimately, you mentioned the White House. There's a liaison between the department and the White House, and it goes to that level. And they look at the package and they see what's, I'm sure they look at, is there any newspaper article on these folks? I'm sure they look at a lot of things, and it takes quite a bit of time before it comes back from headquarters, and then the official appointment is made, not at the site level necessarily, but it comes from the assistant secretary. And that takes at least 9 months probably to go through the whole process. Do you agree?
Yes. All right, so that's if it goes well.
I think
Right.
COVID kind of slowed things
COVID
down
slowed things down.
considerably.
We had a change in administration, so there were positions that needed to fill out review steps that weren't appointed or filled. So it hit bumps. And so our previous package it was closer probably to 13 months before it went through, right? The ones because I first talked to Matt in 2004, I think, to ask him if he wanted to serve on it. It's been a while, right? And so it just took a long time to get through this process, right? So we ask you to serve a 2-year term, right? And we will start at about 14 months into your 2-year term, renewing your membership for the next 2 years to make sure that we have time to get it in and get it squared away. Occasionally, we hit these bumps where that 2-year term hits a hiccup and your term expires, but your new renewal hasn't kicked in, right? So your driver's license is expired, but you can't get into the courthouse to get a new one, so you're driving without a license, right? And that's the gap we're talking about. And so for some of the boards, that gap had gotten pretty lengthy, and they were having a hard time getting quorums for board meetings and getting things to work. It affected Portsmouth, it affected Savannah Riverside, a couple of the other boards. And so the recommendation before you basically asks DOE to give Jeremy or his equivalent at other sites permission to site appoint you for 6 months while you're in that limbo period. Okay? Now, we know that headquarters has agreed already to a 3-month extension. So asking for the 6 month, you know, we didn't get 6 months, we got 3 months, right? However, they are asking if you want to go ahead and sign on with everyone else in this request for the 6-month window. So that's where we are. We know the answer. We know we got something. Didn't get everything we asked for, but that's kind of where we are. That feels like it's a lot of gobbledygook to get us where we're going. Questions? You gotta have questions after that. That makes no sense.
So we got approval for 3 months for sure, but are we asking again for 6 months?
Well, we're just signing our name up to say that we agree with everyone else that we should have. We should allow Jeremy to site a point to cover us for this window. That's kind of what we're saying. So
He's already allowed.
yes,
Okay.
they're not going to come back and change it to 6 months because we signed on it, but it allows us to at least say we stand with the other boards.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And hopefully we've got our ducks in a row, and then when you guys re-up, and hopefully you'll re-up, we won't run into this, and if there is a hiccup for 3 months covers it. Other questions? Bob, Carlton, discussions? You guys sat through hours of discussion on this recommendation. Any thoughts, or?
No, I think it's a good recommendation, you know. Honestly, think it should be the 6-month term, but, you know, you're not gonna get there, and with the other 7 boards already approved of this, it's our interest to go along with everybody else. Yeah, if everybody else was going for a measure, I never tried to stand in the way. You know, so I would recommend we vote for this measure.
All right. Other questions, discussion? All right, Herman, you know how this works.
In the spirit of unity, I recommend we accept the recommendation.
And I'll second it. To make
All right,
it
good
easier.
job from back. We're all on board. I like it.
All right, sorry.
If you have questions or comments on this, please provide those comments in writing to eric@pgbcab.org. If you're following us on YouTube. And I think you have a week from today to get those submitted. All right. All those in favor of allowing our board chair to sign off on this recommendation, please raise your right hand. All right, that's 7. No negatives, no abstentions. Well done, guys. Okay, normally at this time we would move to public comment, but since we're under the COVID restrictions, all public comment had to be submitted in writing. Greg, have you received anything?
I was gonna say, I have not received anything. Did you?
I have not either.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to move to final comments from the board, and to kick that off, we're going to take a second, and obviously we'll go around and anything you guys want to say, we'll let you say before we break. But we wanted to take a moment to recognize folks that have put in a lot of time serving the community. Jimmy, Carlton, Bob have all served 7 years, right? We because of the status of where we were, we asked for extensions for them, and we were kind of giving them. They were kind of probably the last folks that will get extensions under this new program. So 7 years of giving us, in a lot of months, 2 nights a month, and hours at a time, and smiles and laughter, and hard discussions, and fun discussions, and talking about a lot of questions. Talking about dreams and what we wanted to see and what we hope for our kids and grandkids and future generations. Talking about, you know, what could be and what might be. And it's one of the great things about serving on a board is folks from all different backgrounds and experiences coming together, pulling in the same direction. So we have a small parting gift for each of you, and we would like to kind of take a second to recognize you guys.
What is it, the name tag?
You get to take your name tag with you.
Okay. That's really all I want.
Listen, you got your name tag.
You gotta take it out of the plastic thing.
All right.
Gotta give it back.
So let's start with Jimmy. So let's, Jimmy Smalley. Jimmy, holy cow, how many years did you work on site?
22 years.
22
I
years.
had practically every job other than process operator.
So Jimmy has been our anchor for knowing what's going on site, asking questions from
Plus I have little birdies to keep me.
a technical perspective and knowing about what's happening and what's going on, and he's been invaluable. And he always asks even his hard questions that feel difficult and challenging with a smile on his face and a sincerity that he is wanting to do what's best for the community and DOE. And man, it's been a good run. Greg, anything you want to add?
No, the questions that he asks are difficult, but that makes the process better in the end. It really does. Jeremy's job is tough. He's got to answer to a lot of people. I'm lucky that he takes a lot of heat that I could take because I probably cause him problems. But Jimmy, your questions have always been in the right spirit and with the idea that transparency is important. And I think your role has been really good at a time when we were making some tough decisions. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add myself that you talked about the Science Alliance and the Quiz Bowl. Of course, I enjoyed volunteering for that. It's excellent because you get with the young people. And I was a judge down there at the Quiz Bowl a couple times, and I got involved with the Science Alliance. And it's wonderful to see these young people get involved, and they get to see what we're about here and the innovative science stuff. You know, just like that thing they brought back from Iraq. You know, that they could monitor and pull people out. That was fascinating. And then the virtual reality stuff, and all the colleges were involved. And being a judge, I found out, you know, everybody's down on our young people. You know, they won't work, they're busy, but man, I saw some smart people. I'd sit there as a judge, and you know, I had college, and I was a pretty good student at school, and I'm sitting there they're having 20 questions, I get maybe 2, you know, because it's all science and chemistry. And
you were guessing them too, weren't you?
Yeah, I was guessing. And they asked me to judge it, and I'm sitting there going, well, I think that one's right. I think you got the right thing there. I was on there with Poe. Poe was on there, and I was with him. I go, dude, why? They said, what do you think, Judge? And I'm sitting there going, I think they answered that too quick. We'll give that to them. You know, I wasn't even sure the answer half the time, but it's interesting to see those young people. Man, they're some bright people. You know, they're very intelligent young people. That impressed me. And to do that, that was one of the best things I found on this, other than that's my questions, was to work with the young people. And then I was down there one time, and my grandson was down there at that Science Alliance, and I walked up and I met him. I said, and he had a different name tag on him. I said, Brandon, you're not Jack. Well, I'm filling in today. I didn't know I was going to be here. I said, that's pretty cool. He's taller than I am. He comes walking out of the tent, and I go, wow. So that was cool seeing my grandson at the Science Alliance. And I was telling him the things that were interesting. I said, make sure you go over to this tent. Make sure you go over to that one. But, yeah, I enjoyed that. You know, I volunteered for stuff before, but to see these young people and how intelligent, I agree with Greg. Greg's always emphasized about this plant and the infrastructure and trying to get jobs here and continue things here. We're looking towards the future. I've got 6 grandchildren. I've got 2 great-grandchildren, and I don't want them to leave this area. I got 3 children that are RNs, and they work at 2 of them at SMMC, 1 down in Huntington, and they've got local jobs. And I know Bob and Carlton was for that too. We want to help our local people and keep our young people working here, and I'm really impressed with our young people. I really am. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. So, Jeremy, Greg, if I could get you guys to slide over here by the flag on the far side, and we'll have Jimmy step up with you. We'll let you present and Jeremy, if there's anything you want to add, feel free to jump in. I know you haven't had a chance to spend as much time quite as we have, but it's a...
This way?
Yes, sir. So while they're moving over there, we had one of our first home meetings when COVID broke, and it was in the it's December time frame, and Jimmy would jump on his iPad and jump on the meeting with us, and Jimmy kind of stopped and went, hey, you're in my house, let me show you my Christmas tree. So he got up and walked around the house and showed everybody his Christmas tree, and then everybody else in the group was like, well, let me show you our Christmas. And it was one of the really, like, we spend time together here, but we don't go to homes, and so it was really one of those little things that makes Jimmy the best.
Christmas tree, always walk the Christmas tree. Where's the tree? There we go. Hey, you guys are perfect.
I didn't know your hat actually came off, Jimmy.
Perfect. Makes sense. Out of respect.
Out of respect. All right, Jimmy Smalley. So where to start with Carlton Cave? Oh my goodness. So there are the stories we can tell here, and then there are stories we can tell back in the office after the meeting. Carlton, you spent a little time on site, correct?
Yes.
How long were you out there?
I was there about 8.5 years, 71 to 80.
Outstanding. Has some stories I will never forget from being on site with Carlton. Carlton has traveled with us as vice chair of the board for, have you made all the sites, I guess?
No, I don't think so. Or I may have made all the sites, just not all the different meetings.
Okay. You didn't miss many if you missed any. Traveling with Carlton's a great deal because you get to go to good restaurants and listen to jazz music while you're in the car. Carlton is what is best about this board, right? Because he serves because his community, his family are so important to him, and the work he does in his neighborhood and with his family, the work he does for the organizations he's involved with, the care and love he puts in to make sure that everyone is taken care of and everyone is protected and safe is really at the heart of what he does. And it is something that someday I'm gonna grow up and be like Carlton, because I am not that way, but I am thankful for him and his heart and his giving.
You had to up your dress.
Well,
Carlton is clearly the best dressed man in National League. So
Eric, you gotta get a better haircut.
he's outstanding. You can't beat Carlton. You can't beat him. Greg, anything you wanna?
Again, thank you, Carlton, and Jimmy mentioned the kids, and Carlton has, all members do, but Carlton has spent a lot of time, especially in his neighborhood, with kids and family, and I'm sure that he serves as a role model for a lot of kids, a lot of blocks in Portsmouth that live around him, and it's been important, I think. I mean, to get choked up, but I think it's important to keep in mind that we're doing this for the next generation. And Carlton's kept us grounded in that. It's not for us. I'll be retired in a few years, and I won't be out here. It's for the kids. And that's what's so important about some of the programs that Jimmy mentioned and Carlton and Bob have been a part of, is we're showing the next generation the technologies we have, trying to get them excited about learning and expanding their horizons. And much like our grandparents did when they built the place, if they put their mind to something, there's nothing that they can't do. So what if you come from the hills of Southern Ohio?
Right.
I'd rather be from here than Cleveland any day. And
50 years and never missed a ship.
that's right. And so we built it, we operated it. Just again, everybody's worked together on the board really well, but Carlton, you exemplify, a lot about being a neighborhood leader, and you brought it to the board, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Carlton, anything you want to say before we take a picture?
Well, just the fact that to these new board members, we're going to sit around the table, and we've all got different ideas about how to get things done. But the main thing is that sometimes we realize we have to come in just a little so that we can agree to come up with at least one solid answer to the situation. Sometimes these comments and these things are going to get maybe a little heated. But I say that we have to learn to trust each other. Let's don't walk away from here, mad or upset, can't work with that person, because you've got 2 years on the board. And in order for us to accomplish what we have come here to do, there's going to have to be a little give and take and all of this. One thing that I wanted to see, and I tried to always keep this foremost, and that was DOE, Department of Energy. There was a lot of negative to DOE, but I sat here and I worked with Eric. He's in an area down there that has the same type of chemical reactions and things in his environment. Great Simonton, I had to come to realize that I could trust this man. When he told me something, I could really trust him. And why am I saying that? Because his family lives right here in this area also. His concern is for his family here. So it wasn't like he was just DOE, you know, it's them over on this side and us over here on this side. Him and his family's right here. And so I had to take a good look at that and say, this man is committed to making sure that we as a board, we got good information and sometimes incredible information about his heart and how he felt about this area, himself. So you're gonna run into a lot of different things, but I say let's just keep trusting each other and believing that we can solve these problems that's going to come before us. So that's about it, Eric.
You're the best. No one is more beloved at national meetings than Carlton Cave. He is social butterfly. All right, let's get your picture made, man. Social butterfly.
I'm sorry.
All right, Carlton Cave. So Robert Berry. How many years have you been chair? 6 or were you all 7?
I think I've been here 8 years.
8 years. Seven as chair.
Because I've been to 11 meetings off-site and I think 4 online. The only one I didn't go to was the first one when I was on the board.
Holy cow. So what's your favorite site to go to? The answer's pretty good.
No, I'm really bummed because I was trying to hold out to make it to Santa Fe one more time.
One more
and
time.
they're going to Santa Fe in September, and I was just so close. That was by far my favorite place to be. All other 7 sites are nice. Got to go to WIP, which is the disposal site for high waste in Carlsbad. Took us 2,200 feet underground to tour that facility, and got to go to the National Cleanup Conference in Washington, D.C. one time. But, you know, when I came on the board, I really didn't know much about the plant. I didn't work out here. I didn't have any relatives that worked out here. And I've learned so much about when the plant operated, and now that it's going through, you know, the D&D. I learned about the other plants around the site, what their concerns are, and, you know, kind of what they do, and everybody's different. Some way different from us, others not so much. I met a lot of great people on the board, people that come to our public meetings, workers out here at the plant, and you know, people from the DOE from Washington. Everybody I met was helpful. It's just been a great experience. And like I said, not everybody, you know, comes to a public meeting, and even on the board agrees with the opinions I have for the board, but that's okay. And, you know, if you've got 10 to 15 board members and everybody just has the exact same opinion, you really don't have much of a board. You know, you've got to have the give and take and the questions and concerns, and it ends up making your board do better recommendations, not only locally, but to take to the national meeting. It's just been a tremendous experience for me, and I'll miss it. But, you know, that's the way it goes, and it's time to move on, and I thank everybody for my time here. That's about it.
So Bob, by nature, is not a talker, right? And at national meetings, he has to carry the message for the site. and you can tell, it's, especially initially, it was tough, right? And I facilitate most of those meetings and be like, hey, Bob, what do you think? And they're like, nothing, right? And so as he's grown in his ability to lead and represent this site and be the person that speaks out for this community to the other sites, to the Hanfords and Savannah Rivers and Oak Ridges who get, you know, 3 of them, half the DOE budget goes to 3 sites, right? And so to go and fight for Portsmouth and to fight for what's important and to say, hey, listen, we think there's opportunity for all of us to win if you support us in this direction. And to see him become that leader for the community has been really exciting. And as chair of this board the last 7 years, there's been a lot going on in our community in the last 7 years, good and bad, related to DOE.
It's kind of, you know, when I got on, they were just trying to finish up the rod, and now we're all way to waste disposition, and the 326 is almost down, and those were just way down the road when I started on board, you know. I remember my first board meeting, I came in and sat down, and we had a full board, and it was a little testy for the meeting, and you know, everything was over my head they were talking about. Started to walk out, and they said, "Oh, can you stay for a minute?" Yeah, you know, I'm new. What? I thought they were going to give me something. They said, "Do you want to be chair?" What? They said, "Well, just think about that." And you know, I went in as vice chair, and Will moved up to the chair and went to a couple meetings with Will, and then went on from there. But it's been great, you know. So you never know what you're going to walk into.
Bob Smile and Even Kill have carried the board through a lot of meetings over the last few years, where folks were upset and angry, folks were frustrated with DOE, and this was an avenue that they could express their frustrations. Folks were concerned about their kids and didn't know where to turn or look at sometimes, and this was a spot where they could try to express that frustration. And so to have Bob just to, you know, to be the dad and sit there and just listen and kind of take it and never get frustrated or angry and just say, hey, listen, well, thanks for letting me know. You telling me, you know, we'll see what we can do about it. And that's been a big deal.
You know, and you know, coming on the board, if you hear stories like that, you know, I've been yelled at, jeered, booed.
Well, you're selling this really well.
But you know, and you hear those stories, but once I've like walked out of this room, no one has approached me outside of this room. No one has sought me out in the public. No one's ever called me on my phone. No one's ever physically. I mean, what happened in here stayed, and you know, and people that were upset when they walked out the door, they collected their feelings and they went, you know, you could go your separate way. I mean, there was never any worry, you know. People just got vocal here, and they were frustrated in what they believed and the message they wanted to get out. And when they, you know, got to say their peace of mind and put their point out there, they were okay. You know, so I don't know if anybody on this board has ever been approached outside this room, you know, by anybody else. You don't have to worry about it.
I don't think there's been a time that we've called Bob and said, hey, we need a favor. Somebody's coming in town, they think they might want to meet you as part of the board. Or DOE has a question, they want to talk. And, you know, and he has been over backwards to make it happen while working and caring for his mom and trying to watch a little football now and then to be here. And I am humbled by his sacrifice in doing that. In times that he has shown up here thinking that there were going to be meetings and hoping to, and then the plans change, and he spent the afternoon in it. And they're like, hey, can we do it tomorrow morning instead of today? He said, yeah, I'll come back. And you're like, that's just the willingness to serve is abundant, and I'm thankful. Greg, anything you want?
kind of answered a lot of the things that I was gonna say, but even keeled and respectful will take you a long way. And Bob, served as chair when we had some pretty contentious meetings. I mean, there's just no other way of putting it. We were going through decision-making, and it's tough, and there's extreme emotions on each side, and Bob was able to listen and be respectful, and at the end of it all, I made a friend of somebody I never even knew before this board. I'm pretty sure Bob would still say hi to me on the street. I think he'd still be a friend after he leaves.
If you buy me a beer.
I'll do that, and since you're a banker, I'll ask you for a loan. But no, I think, respectful comes to mind and how well that serves you, and you've done a great job, Bob, as chair, both at the national level, but also more importantly here in our own town, because it's not always been easy, but you've shown what happens when you don't get real emotional and you stay even keeled and respectful. People respect you at the end of it, so thank you.
Let's go get your picture, man.
All right.
I think last time we were in Santa Fe, Bob, we went to that restaurant and sat out on a bar that looked out over the street, and I didn't think we were gonna get him home. It was like, I am the happiest man in the world right now, just watching the crowd and nursing a beer all night. He's done such a great job, and he and Carlton make a great pair. All right, you guys can come back. Final comments from you guys. We'll give you guys a chance. Any last thoughts on anything you want to talk about? Floor is yours.
I did get confronted one time after a meeting.
Did you really?
Out there, yeah.
Was it me or Julie?
No, it was one of the members said, "Why are you rattling Dennis's cage?" I said, "I'm not rattling Dennis's cage. I just share information."
It's fine. Anyone else? Anything to share?
He talked about being out there in Santa Fe, and we were on a bus coming back. Everybody rode to the site we had to visit was probably an hour and a half drive from Santa Fe. We came back, and there was a park we went by, and the lady was kind of leaning towards it. It was like September. She said, look at our grass. Look how beautiful our grass is. It was brown. And she said, look how pretty that is. And it's this late, and we're like, what are they talking? It's like, that's weeds to us. I mean, they were just so proud of this brown grass, It's like, no, that's not grass.
You didn't invite her to Ohio to see
Yeah, I thought you
what-
should come up here and see green trees, and, but it had its own beauty, I guess, for the mountains, but they did not have grass.
Anyone else? All right, Bob, you get to, whoa, you're no longer chair. You have to pass that around to Herman.
Oh,
sorry. I did not mean to, but we're
That wasn't even
follow
nice.
protocol.
My gosh.
You're welcome.
Herman's got practice at this.
Yeah, but it's
You keep
bigger,
that
it's
for
bigger
defense.
mouth and it's used a lot different ways.
Remember last
Bob
time
Carlton, you
become the
guys did a
judge?
great job. Thank you for being with us, for serving, for your leadership. Jimmy, thank you. Greg, Jeremy, any last comments from you guys?
I'll just say I look forward to working with all of you, and if you ever have questions, let us know. We're happy to answer them. I share a lot of the same sentiments that Carl portrayed earlier. I'm a local boy. My kids go to school at Piketon. I want to do this the best way possible. So really appreciate you guys serving on this board, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Since I got that mouth, can I say something?
Absolutely.
I mean, we're not going to argue.
Okay. The thing of it is I thought about this today, is when I first came out to the plant side, we talked about it, how it was a living thing, and it was, being a young person back then, I was really, really excited to work there. I thought it was the coolest place that you could ever be, and of course I'm second generation, and I heard all the stories, and I had a lot of friends of my father was always kind of taking me under the wing, and that's a little bit different than what people might think. Usually they give me a hard time every way they could, but they were good people, and I think it's and just to make it known because of that. I mean, I really believe that this plant has, even though we're cleaning it up, so much potential, so much opportunity, and we work hard now with that. And I appreciate the opportunity to sit on this board, because I think we can help and demonstrate that labor, DOE, management, the community can all work together. But sometimes a lot of people like to pit us against each other. I don't think it's as challenging as what they try to make it out to be. So that's my 2 cents worth. And I'm very appreciative for the opportunity.
Anyone else? All right, what do you think?
Motion adjourned?
Adjourn.
Adjourned, okay.
All right, thanks, guys.